On this edition of the program, we preview Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and there's a new Senate race to follow in the midterms. Senator Pete. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here from a rapidly thawing Austin, Texas. A little grainy, gross and rainy. That's something I literally just invented. We're going to have Jen Briney on the show to preview a big week of confirmation hearings. We are indeed your hearing aids. And we have a big update for you, including some moments where Donald Trump is probably cutting a little close to the bone. Some funding pauses whenever the money stops flowing. You had a lot of people with their hands up saying, wait a minute, where's the cash? Both in foreign aid and domestic. We will get to that, as well as a buyout for federal workers. But we begin with this. I got an email over the weekend, a couple emails actually. Very nice gentleman by the name of Walter emailed me and said, hey, I'm kind of wondering when you're going to talk about the January 6th pardons. Then he sent another email and he said, wait a minute, okay. I just got to the part in your Wednesday episode where you said on the Friday episode you're going to talk about the January 6th pardon. Sorry for sending the email. And then I guess he listened to the Friday episode and he sent me the following email, and I'm going to read this verbatim. I came away feeling unsatisfied. I guess I was hoping for a more passionate take from this topic. One way or another, Claire's analysis felt detached and sounded more matter-of-fact than the usual. My takeaway is that you think that this isn't a big deal, but I couldn't tell whether you think it was a net positive or negative for Big Chungus in terms of his broader goals. Also, I know you had at least 8 episodes of PX3 covering Biden's pardons within the last few months, so I was like, oh man, Justin's going to go berserk about Trump's pardons. I figured you'd go all in on this. Overall, it just feels like there's a lot more to unpack. Give us some fire about this. Tell the listeners if we're being too worked up and why. Especially if it's different than Joe's debauchery. Or maybe you think that it is a big deal and that Trump did misstep. That you think it's morally wrong. I'm crossing my fingers for more of you on this. So, I figured I would do it up top. Let me spell this out. Between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we are through the historical looking glass on comparing pardons, because both what Trump has done with January 6th and what Biden did specifically in the last 2 weeks of his presidency are really unlike anything that I have seen in my entire life in pardons. And if we weren't such a partisan country, I think that we would probably be having more of a national conversation about what is happening with the pardon power in the executive branch. Because the only reason we're not is because no side has a clean shot at the other one. Republicans were slamming the Biden pardons, and then the January 6th pardons come on and they're like, what if we just don't talk about pardons anymore? Same with the opposite. Democrats were getting real girded up to rip Trump for the Jan 6 pardons and then the Biden pardons. And so it's like, yeah, okay, well, let's move on. And here's the reason why you can't really compare them to anything that's happened in the past. Let's start with the beginning. Pardons usually follow a very simple 3-step structure. Somebody is charged with a crime, Somebody is convicted of the crime's punishment is being served, and then there is a pardon or commutation. Some of them happen when the person is dead. These are usually uncontroversial. Somebody dies, they posthumously become on the right side of history, and now all of a sudden a president says, well, guess what? They never did the crime that they were charged with at some point. Or somebody has a checkered past, and then they really make up for it. So, okay, person who at one time carjacked somebody and went to jail, but you found a purpose in life, and now you help orphans, so congratulations, you never really carjacked somebody. The first time in my life that I remember pardons being something that were talked about was Mark Rich with Bill Clinton. Mark Rich was a financier in the 1980s when he was charged with tax evasion and fraud. So, okay, we have two of the things. There's a person, there is a charge. But Mark Rich fled the country. He went to Switzerland. And then, over a decade later, his ex-wife becomes a big donor to the Clintons, specifically the Bill Clinton Library. And on his last day in office, in the year 2001, Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich. And that became a big story because you had one part of that chain taken away. Mark Rich was charged, but he never served any time. So beyond this being a gross pardon because they were funding the Clintons, Mark Rich was also evading justice. The most expansive pardon, at least until a few weeks ago, was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon obviously went through a few things with Watergate, things that could very well have been charged. He could have gone to trial. He could have faced criminal prosecution. But Gerald Ford, his successor and vice president, pardoned him. He preemptively pardoned him because Richard Nixon had not been charged with anything yet. This is and was controversial. Did Gerald Ford do the right thing? Would it have been better if Richard Nixon had faced justice? Or was it the best thing for the country to turn the page? Allow America to look forward. Of course, all of that changes with Joe Biden a few weeks ago. Not only do we get preemptive pardons for a variety of people, some of which didn't even ask for them or specifically said that they did not want them, like Senator Adam Schiff, but Dr. Fauci, General Milley, Liz Cheney, the rest of the January 6th investigation panel, they all got them. And then, of course, there's the worst of them. Not only Hunter Biden, but also other members of the Biden family, including some that hadn't even really been named in some of the investigations into his family. All of these were preemptive, blocking out large swaths of time. Essentially, Joe Biden handed out extremely liberally pardons that were the size and scope of the most controversial pardon in history. And I don't really see much of an argument that that description is incorrect. If anybody has one, feel free to email me, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. But to Walter's point, I've already done a lot of content on that. Let's talk about January 6th and what's different. To my knowledge, everybody that was pardoned, the 1,500 plus that were involved in January 6th, had something in common. They had all been charged, many of whom were tried or were in the process of being tried, and many had either pled guilty and begun their sentences or were in the process of being sentenced. So you have all three parts of what would be a normal pardon. What is unique, and I do believe that this is extraordinarily unique, and we should not look at this in any other way, is Donald Trump's connection and culpability to the crime itself. So, my dear friend Walter, why was I fire and brimstone on the Biden pardons and yet more fact-findery when it came to the January 6 pardons? Quite simply because I could totally identify the novelty and consequences of the Biden ones. On the other hand, I really wanted to talk to Claire about the January 6 ones. Claire has covered these cases. She covered the Oath Keepers case. She covered the Proud Boys case. She was already in D.C. talking to people that were outside of the D.C. jail. She knows, and I trust her judgment on this, what the facts on the ground are. And I wanted to know more about that because there is one central claim that the Trump administration says triggered the broad element of the pardon as opposed to a case-by-case review. And that was denial of due process. Make no mistake, January 6th was an awful, ugly stain on American history. And the American rule of law is that everybody gets their day in court, especially American citizens, even in situations where you have done heinous, unspeakable things. For what it's worth, one of the J6 lawyers, William Shipley, has written, not only in the past, but does write currently, that there were routine due process violations that happened with some of his clients as he was defending them. Specifically, something very routine, which is in cases where January 6 people were pleading guilty. So they weren't even contesting the fact that they did what the state alleged them to do. Normally, you are allowed to transfer your sentencing to your home district if you did something outside of your home district. So, for example, somebody travels from Fort Worth and then goes up to D.C., gets in trouble. If they plead guilty, then the Department of Justice would allow them to go get sentenced back home where you're going to wind up serving it. That was not the case, according to Mr. Shipley. Mr. Shipley says that the DOJ maliciously made sure that all of these people were sentenced in D.C. where they would face harsher punishment because the judges are of D.C. The courthouse stares right into the Capitol. Many of those same judges could have watched what happened from their windows. This is a far more scarring event. Now, do I buy that? Do I think that that is compelling? To be totally honest with you, not entirely. No. I think that there is enough evidence that there were people who physically attacked cops and should probably still be in jail. If I had my druthers, that would be the case. For the rest of people who were trespassing or doing other things that they pled guilty for, I don't know. But that gets into the miasma of going through this stuff case by case. And I will admit to this. I have a gut reaction, especially when it comes to Trump things, that whenever there is a very clear-minded consensus around certain elements that are critical to Donald Trump, I do pull up a little bit because I know that's where my natural inclination would want to lead me, and indeed has led me in the past. And so I do want to take a few steps back, and I want to see things unfold a little bit. And that's why I wanted to have Claire on. But you also asked whether or not this is a political loss for Trump. I don't think so. I think that January 6th does not mean much to people that do not already hate Donald Trump and do not live in D.C. I'd compare it to a mass shooting. It's very sad. The town that it happens in might never forget it, but the nation itself moves on. The memories ever fading like an old picture. And without national passion, you have a hard time moving a political needle, which, by the way, is probably part of the reason that Donald Trump did blanket pardon everybody. Because now that he's done the thing, there is only a criticism in past tense. He shouldn't have done that. Had he gone case by case, then we would all be going case by case. We would be looking at individuals who got a pardon versus individuals who didn't get a pardon. And we would not be talking about shouldn't, we would be talking about should. He should offer this person a pardon. He should have done X, Y, or Z. By putting it all in the rearview mirror, he no longer has to talk about it unless he wants to talk about it. It is done. The tension is relieved. You can be glad about it. You can be mad about it, but it is over. America looks forward. And now we're on to the next. Funding pauses, Colombian presidents, and the price of eggs. But just know this, Walter. Know that no matter what, you can always trust that I will read these things the best that I can. And if I am slow, it is not necessarily a value judgment, but it is the care that I have for you, the viewing and listening audience, to this, my precious platform, that I respect your time, and I respect your bandwidth. All right, we got the update. Jen Briney's coming up after that. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Head on over there right now. Substack, the place to be when it comes to political writing. I gotta say, normally what happens in the world of politics is a lot of dumb stuff happens right now. You got a lot of bad writing, a lot of bad reporting. And I could not be more proud to be on Substack. And here's why. When I was at that Substack DC happy hour, and I'm looking around, I'm saying, if this were a publication, if this were the Washington Post, if this were the New York Times, if this were CNN, this would be a hell of a roster. This would be a killer roster. It would be well read. I'll tell you that, because it had intellectual diversity, it had personality, and it had charm. Not to mention a lot of knowledge. And it also allows me to make a living. It allows me to serve you. And here's how I serve you. In these confusing times, when we are not giving you dumb stuff, I've been very proud to add my content to a roster of people that are doing great work, informative work, some of the best work of their careers, in my opinion. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Huh? How's that sound? Huh? Does that grab you? Huh? You like that, huh? Okay. 2 bonus episodes for $3 a week, sometimes less. I mean, it's $12, so whatever. Average out however you want to do it. $12 a month, $3 a week. That's all you got to do. Head on over there. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Sign up at our annual. That's $99. Boom. If you signed up right now, we would be into primary season for the midterms by the time that you'd even have to think about that again. Oh, and considering our top story here, we're going to have some good midterm primaries. Ooh, some really good ones. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. 2 bonus episodes each and every week right there on the page. And here's why you're going to want to subscribe, because Michigan is now in play in a much bigger way than it would have been otherwise. That's because Senator Gary Peters has announced that he will not seek re-election in 2026, opting to step aside and pass the reins for the next generation. Peters, 66, has served 2 terms since his 2024 election. His departure opens a competitive seat in a state narrowly won by President Trump in 24. Potential Democratic candidates include former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who says he is taking a serious look at the race, as well as Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and Representative Haley Stevens and Hillary Schlottin. Gretchen Whitmer taking her name out of that race today. So she's got 28 on the brain. On the Republican side, former Representative Mike Rogers and Representative John James are considered potential contenders. Tim Scott is the recruiter for the Senate side this time. And I would say, depending on where we go with that, Michigan is now the co-main event of the midterms. Kemp versus Ossoff, if it happens in Georgia, would be the number one. That's your heavyweight fight. That's the big deal of big deals. And then you got co-main event Michigan for the Senate, and then Tom Tillis versus whoever runs against Tom Tillis in North Carolina. That would be the undercard. But let's talk about this for a second. Because I know some of you are saying, wait a minute, Mayor Pete? That dude is from South Bend, Indiana. We know that because he won't let us forget about the fact that he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame. Touchdown Jesus. What in the boot edge is happening? But you might have forgot that when Pete Buttigieg came into the administration, the Biden administration, he moved. He moved to Michigan. He became a Michigan resident because his husband had family there. Certainly no political calculations. So I believe that Pete Buttigieg is going to run. I think he is going to run for this Senate seat. And I think he might be the weakest possible Democrat. But he is definitely going to get the most attention. He's going to bring a lot of media to this race. Does he flame out? Does he get the nomination? So here's why I think it's very interesting, because we haven't seen Pete on the campaign trail since the primaries in 2020. Since then, he's had the run as transportation secretary. The Biden administration hasn't necessarily acquitted itself particularly well in the lens of history, but there were wins for Pete. You know, he did some popular stuff with airline tickets and stuff like that. So he doesn't come out as a net negative from that experience. But the question's going to be, can he defend the carpetbagger charges? Because Michigan does have a deep bench, and there are a lot of people who are going to want to be a senator. If he can, I do think he makes a very interesting and credible nominee to become a senator on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, there's some questions. Do you just rerun Mike Rogers? It's kind of a gamble, because if Donald Trump is popular, or at least more popular than he normally is, right now he's actually just popular. He's like above water in both 538 and Real Clear Politics' popularity tracker. But if he's still like, high 40s, that's good for a modern president, then Mike Rogers makes sense. Mike Rogers can say, hey, look, we're doing good stuff. You should have sent me 2 years ago. Don't make the same mistake twice. Let's go. Rogers for the win. Or do you find somebody else? Rumors floating that Tony Dungy might want to be the senator from Michigan. He'd be like 70 when he got in there, so he'd already be in Grassley territory. But interesting. Michigan is now definitely on our radar. Moving on, U.S. District Judge Lauren Ali Khan temporarily blocked the Trump administration's directive to freeze federal grants and loans, which could have affected trillions of dollars in funding. The administration has planned to pause disbursements to conduct an ideological review of federal spending, targeting programs related to foreign aid, environmental initiatives, and diversity efforts. The National Council of Nonprofits filed an emergency lawsuit arguing that the freeze would severely disrupt essential services. Judge Ali Khan's order prevents the freeze from taking effect until at least February 3rd, when a hearing is scheduled. The move has been met with widespread confusion and concern among federal agencies and recipients of federal aid, leading to legal challenges from multiple states and organizations. So, I think that the Trump administration has been run extraordinarily competently for a week. Pretty good. Pretty good by Trump administration standards. They made it a week. They made it a week. There were two things that happened that felt a little fly-by-nighty, and you know it's fly-by-night because they both had to be clarified. One was a funding halt for foreign aid. The other was a funding halt for domestic aid. Now, I have a reason why I think these things are happening, and I'll get to that in a second, but you know that they were slapdash because immediately there had to be clarifications. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had to say, well, hold on, okay, so we'll carve out stuff that is life-saving. That money can keep going because America doesn't want blood on its hands, but we also want the ability to review all the money that's going out. And then there was like, okay, well, all domestic money is being frozen. And then it's like, wait a minute, you mean for Medicaid? You mean for Medicare? You mean for Social Security? And they had to say, whoa, no, we don't mean that, we don't mean that. Now, here's why I think that the Trump administration is doing both of these things. I think that they are doing both of these things, not necessarily just to track where money is going. I believe they are doing these things to see who in the federal government doesn't comply with the order. It is very clear, and we're going to get to it in our third story, that Donald Trump believes the government would be actively working against him. He would be up against, dare I say it, the permanent bureaucracy known as lightning strike sound effect, the deep state. What he wants to do is to have anybody that would out and out tell on themselves and do something that would be totally out of pocket to do that now. He wants to do it early. That includes things like malicious compliance. You've seen that a lot on the right. That you have Pete Hegseth said as the new Secretary of Defense, okay, well, we are ending DEI programs. So then somebody says, okay, well, we're no longer teaching about the Tuskegee Airmen. That is, well, okay, well, you said no DEI programs, so we're not going to talk about black heroes in the military. Pete Hegseth came in and said, no, reinstate that, blah, blah, blah. This is, I believe, by design from the Trump administration. And I'm further buoyed by that because of this final story. The Trump administration has announced a plan to offer buyouts to federal employees unwilling to return to in-office work. According to a senior administration official, a government-wide memo will be sent proposing that employees who resign by February 6th will continue to receive their salary through September 30th. The initiative aims to ensure that all federal workers adhere to the administration's mandate for in-office attendance and higher performance standards. They claim that only 6% of federal employees work full-time in the office, a figure that the administration deems unacceptable. I've seen other claims that it's closer to 47% haven't returned to the office. Which even then, when I saw people pushing back, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's not just 6%, it's 48%. I'm like, it's not exactly a super flex, but still, that is a lot of people. A lot of people work from home in the federal government, which I've heard has done wonders for DC traffic, but the Trump administration is looking for reasons to fire federal employees. And so firing federal employees is very, very hard. The best thing that you can do is try to make them quit and try to financially incentivize them to say, you want to know what? You don't want to be part of the Death Star? Fine. Go ahead. You will have your money until the fall or the end of the summer. They believe, the Trump administration, that is, that they can get 5 to 10% of the federal workforce to take this deal. Their claim would be that would be $100 billion savings for the taxpayer. Some other elements that I want to point out here, and part of the reason why I do think this is happening now. Also happening in Doral, Florida, that is North Miami, at Donald Trump's Doral golf course. As I speak to you, there are a bunch of Republicans probably getting drunk with each other because they have just wrapped up a full day of trying to decide how they are going to push through Donald Trump's agenda. One of the biggest hurdles that will exist in getting this done are a bunch of fiscal hawks saying the tax cuts are too expensive. I don't want to give X amount of money for deportations, blah, 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 blah. Federal budget, federal budget, federal budget, deficit, deficit, deficit. That's why Representative Massey wears a debt clock as a lapel pin that is constantly going up and up and up, showing that America is indeed a nation that is in debt, and we might well fall off the fiscal cliff. I'm going to take a wild guess, whether or not this is coordinated, who knows, but that things like these are being done so that the executive branch can say to the fiscal hawks, whatever math you're doing, add $100 billion to it. Add $100 billion to that and keep $100 billion in the back of your mind when the Congressional Budget Office comes back and scores this as costing $1 trillion, right? At the very least, we're going to try and save $100 billion right off the top. And Elon Musk is working to, find redundant printers so we can save another $1 trillion. But they want to, I think, this is my guess, is that they are trying to indicate to those people, look, we're going to find money elsewhere. We are not fiscally irresponsible. This isn't just more money on top of more money on top of more money. But who knows? That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. You like this show, especially you like the bonus or you like the update part? You get that and more, baby. That and more. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's get to Jen. One thing before we begin with Jen's interview, I do want to do a very quick addendum. I was about to publish this, but I do need to talk about it. A few things that have happened before we get to RFK's hearing and Tulsi Gabbard's hearing. We're going to talk a lot about that in this interview, but a few things have dropped. Caroline Kennedy came out and said that she is against RFK Jr.'s appointment. Caroline Kennedy is far more interwoven into the power politics of the modern Democratic Party. She has been a multiple-time ambassador. She was one of the first big endorsers for Barack Obama back in 2008. So make of that what you will. RFK Jr., obviously the black sheep of the family, now crossing the line into a Republican administration. Although I would suspect that old Joe Kennedy probably wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. And then there's this. Tulsi Gabbard, in an article in the New York Times, Which, you want to know what? Let's read this. Let's actually. Headline is, a Vatican meeting added scrutiny of Tulsi Gabbard's foreign travels. I would encourage you to read it, but if you remember Tulsi Gabbard complaining that she had been put on a TSA watch list, this article confirms it, but it doesn't treat that confirmation as the story. It says that the reason she was put on it, and this comes from leaking on background from the government, is because she went to a conference in the Vatican that was put on by a man who was on a terror watch list. The New York Times knows the name of the person, but will not say the name because they were not able to verify why the man was on the list. So they got a government briefing. The government briefing said, hey, this is why we put her on there. Here's the name of the guy that was on the list. They're like, well, why was he on the list? We can't tell you. And they ran with it. They then staple on another weird thing, which is that there was a intelligence briefing where two members of Hezbollah were talking to each other and said that Tulsi Gabbard, back when she met Assad, which is its own controversy, but that's a far more discussed one, that she had met with the big guy. To which I said, she met with Joe Biden? No. Apparently, to these two Hezbollah fighters, the big guy was somebody that was either a Hezbollah leader or a Lebanese government official that is close with Hezbollah. Those aren't exactly rare. There are a lot of Lebanese military officials that are close with Hezbollah. And that's the story. I don't get it. I mean, like, here's what I don't get about the story. Like, look, government comes to you and they say, hey, look, we got this information on Tulsi. I understand hearing them, and I understand even running it. What I don't understand is folding it into a larger story about this whole process. Like, talk to Tulsi Gabbard about it. Talk to the people that were mad, that were asking the TSA for why she was put in the Quiet Skies program. Like, make a larger story of the back and forth, the curious case of Tulsi Gabbard's TSA status, right? Because that's new information then. But this isn't presented like that. This is presented like, ooh, Tulsi Gabbard, she's so sketchy. When it's like, it doesn't really have the goods, in my opinion. Like, I read that, and now knowing that the government came to the Times to tell him that, and I'm like, that's a bad reason to put a public figure that's critical of the current administration on a terror watch list, on a TSA watch list, right? I just don't think that that's a great thing to do. It's probably a bad thing to do. It's an even worse thing to talk to the Times about it. But of course, the reason why they're doing it is because they don't want her to be confirmed. There's no other way to say that. There's no reason why the government is going to the Times and telling them that unless they were trying to sink her nomination. All that being said, here's our interview with Jen Briney about that and more. Friends, you don't have to see it yourself. We are your hearing aids. Justin Robert Young joined by Jen Briney of Congressional Dish. And this is kind of a pregame for some of the most explosive and interesting hearings. We laid out before 2 weeks ago that the three most interesting ones were Hegseth, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard. RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are going to start today as you listen to this. RFK on Wednesday, Tulsi on Thursday. Those are probably the most consequential ones. So we'll do a little bit of preview for that. But let's recap where we're at right now, which is everyone's gotten through so far. Like, we're going to find out with Sean Duffy on whether or not people stop being polite and start getting confirmed. But he was 97-0 coming out of cloture. So it seems like he is going to do pretty well on that. Kristi Noem is confirmed. Hegseth over the weekend confirmed. Was there anything about the Hegseth vote that stuck out to you?
Yes. And I think for people that are panicking about the Trump administration, this might give them a teeny tiny bit of solace, which is that J.D. Vance, our new vice president, had to break the tie there because there were 3 Republicans that voted against his confirmation. 2 are like not surprising. It's Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine. They go against the party sometimes. They will vote their conscience. They weren't surprising. But the third vote that went against him was Mitch McConnell. And that
Cocaine Mitch.
I just find it fascinating because he was the Republican leader for so long. And for him to this early in the Trump administration vote against something that Trump wants, I see it as a signal telling the Republicans, like, you have permission to go against him when you feel like, at least from Mitch. And it's like, I know John Thune is the leader now, but like, is he really? It's kind of like over on the Democrat side where it's like, yeah, Hakeem Jeffries is the leader in the House, but like, we all know Nancy's still calling the shots. So we don't know yet what the Republican leadership actually is. But for Mitch McConnell, of all people, to be like, I'm going to say no this early on something that I know you really want, I think it's an early signal that the revolt against Trump, which I think is inevitable, it's already begun in this teeny tiny way, and it's week number 1. So that was the most fascinating part of it for me.
Let me push back on that just a scotch.
Sure.
Mitch McConnell did vote against it, and he did put out a lengthy statement as to how Hegseth was not qualified for the job. And he did both of those things on Friday night at like 10 o'clock at night. He did not do it a week beforehand. He did not try to kill Hegseth's nomination. He voted in a way that was safe because they have a 3-vote cushion. So Trump did get what he wanted, but he was able to vote the way that he wanted. Now, I have no doubt that Mitch McConnell definitely does not like Pete Hegseth and wanted to put his way out, put his opinion out there, although it seemed like just as much of it was because Pete Hegseth didn't seem to be as excited about buying as many weapons as previous secretaries of defense have been. But it was very interesting to me. I think you are dead on that we are getting a look at what Senator McConnell is going to be and not Leader McConnell.
Yeah.
Because he did not undercut Thune. This is Thune's first big rodeo. He didn't immediately come out and say, nope, sorry, I know you're trying to whip these votes. I'm going to totally send a gigantic bat signal that people should revolt. He waited until the end. So Collins and Murkowski both made their intentions known days before. And if anything, it really made an interesting perspective when Tom Tillis, who at the end of it seemed to be possibly the only person that would have actually spiked the nomination, because you can get 3 through with J.D. Vance breaking the tie. Tom Tillis was wobbling in the last 24 hours. And then after a multi-hour conversation with Pete Hegseth that I'm sure had nothing to do with the fact that Tom Tillis is a senator from North Carolina, which has a heavy military presence. And I'm sure there were no asks from that perspective. He decided to vote for him. So I didn't quite see it as a revolt. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have long been at odds. But I did see it as like McConnell will need to be wooed if his vote is needed. And I think that he might be needed in some of these votes coming up over the next week with these hearings that are about.
For sure. I mean, the manner that he did it is very much like a turtle, if you will, poking its head out. I mean, like, no, right at the last minute, it wasn't brave. It wasn't bold, but it was still a no from someone that important in the party.
But so, he's the old leader. He knows when there's a safe no, right? Like that was a safe no.
I'm just saying that I think that the insanity of the Trump administration, like, because we remember from the first one, by the time you had a bunch of bumpkins raiding the Capitol, there were a lot of Republicans being like, this is insane. And I just think that at some point, with a lame duck president who can't run again, who's doing insane things sometimes, I think there's gonna come a point that Republicans start saying no to him. And so just seeing someone of that stature in the party so early give him a no, like, I just think it was just interesting. That's
I read
all
a
I'm
little
saying.
bit less into it.
Well,
But
you're less hopeful than me. I'm looking for any tea leaves of, rebellion in that party, because there has been a lot of unanimity, and that was a little crack. I
mean, well, I think I look at it more on the side that I think the Democrats totally missed their opportunity to try to actually spike him. I think that they went far too in, and we discussed this last time, but they went way too heavily into the personal stuff, and they didn't try to expose him as somebody who just wasn't read up. Like, nobody in a 4-hour hearing, unless you are living it, like Marco Rubio was with State, where it's like there's very, very little that Marco Rubio's not going to be able to answer because he spent so much time on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He is very much that this has been his thing. He's been groomed for Secretary of State for a decade, right?
Yeah.
Hegseth has not been that for the Department of Defense. He wouldn't be on short lists unless it was Donald Trump's short list, right? So you could probably quiz him on a bunch of stuff, and he would have, you would have given him enough rope to hang himself.
Give him his where is Aleppo moment, and they didn't.
And they did. I mean, the most
do that.
Tammy Duckworth got him on one of the South Asian organizations. Or whatever.
What's ASEAN? And he didn't
ASEAN,
know.
but even then, that's not a military alliance; it's an economic alliance. So it's like, okay, so he didn't know what the price of tea was in China. Like, it's not necessarily the end of the world for him. I thought it was a bad form by the Democrats. We'll see exactly how they go with some of these next ones, because there's there's less of a straight line with these next two that are coming up.
Because they're Democrats.
Essentially, yeah.
That's what's so fun about this. Like, I genuinely don't know what's going to happen, and usually we kind of know. With RFK and Tulsi, like, I don't know. So I'm excited.
Well, also, like, with RFK, if we talk about what I think could have tripped up Hegseth, I think a lot of the same things could trip up RFK. Not because RFK is not a learned man, but RFK is somebody that for his entire life, everybody has gathered around him and just listened to him talk. He is a Kennedy. He is Bobby's son. He is a raconteur. And surely he is a learned man, but he is used to being a fairly unquestioned authority in the areas in which he has lived in. He's not used to just being peppered repeatedly with these kinds of questions and having to know chapter and verse how the entire bureaucracy of the Health and Human Services works. That's where I see he could blow up on the launch pad. Not because if he's in the pocket and talking about seed oils and all the stuff that he wants to talk about, he's going to do great. Because when he does that stuff on podcasts, people tend to like him more than not like him. If they start asking him, well, what are the 5 sub-agencies of the 7 agencies that you're going to control? And what did you think about this scandal that happened 5 years ago? How would you have handled it differently? He may well look dead-eyed in the camera and say, what? And that's where these kind of unconventional picks have weaknesses, in my opinion.
But just knowing the Democrats, they won't do that. They'll ask him, have you ever cheated on your wife? And they'll ask all of this, like, really side issues. Like, they'll make it about the person instead of, making it a job application, which was what you said was their problem with Hegseth. I mean, I've just seen the Democrats be so uncoordinated with this stuff forever. Because really, like, one of the things that was so different about the January 6th committee that really worked for them is that each of those members of Congress got 5-minute chunks to ask their questions. But they had coordinated their 5-minute chunks and even had...
Because it was a television show.
Exactly. But what they did is they had I think he was a prosecutor. No, Dan Goldman. He's now in the House, but he was the one they hired to do this. They had a lawyer that they were giving their 5 minutes to so that the questions could continue.
Yeah.
They are not doing that in most hearings, including these confirmation hearings. And even if they just had a 10-minute meeting before the hearing to be like, okay, like this is what we really want to get to the bottom of, or just some kind of strategy, they never do that. And so often they end up wasting their 5 minutes on stupid speeches, obviously, but also they'll repeat themselves over and over again. So it's just, I think America, because once again, it's the Trump administration, so we're paying more attention. I've seen a lot of frustration with the Democrats lately, and I think it's because they're finally seeing how uncoordinated they are and the lack of strategy in these hearings. Yeah. And so it's just in prime time now, but this is how they operate. So I'm not all that worried that they're going to be the issue for Tulsi and RFK. I'm still more interested in how the Republicans react to them, because both of them are Democrats. And I think that's going to be a problem for some Republicans. So it's their questions I'm going to be watching more than the Democrats, because the Democrats, who cares?
Well, if anything, I mean, I think the bigger question with the Democrats are in both of these, but probably more RFK, is how many Democratic votes is RFK going to be able to pull? Because he's like personal friends with like 2 or 3 of them. He has known like 2 or 3 of these people forever. And unless things get scorched earth and things are really, really, really ugly by the time that this vote comes down, he's probably going to peel a few Democrats off. So let's actually start with that. Well, let's start with RFK. As we look forward, what are the lines of attack that you think are going to come down from either the Republican side or the Democratic side? Start wherever you want, and then I'll go with the opposite.
Well, with Democrats, vaccines. They're going to pull up every single thing he's ever said that they think is questionable, and they're just going to hammer him on that, because it's really all they've got. When you look at what he's been talking about lately, like stuff that's in our food, and he's worried about the chemicals that are being sprayed, you know, the stuff, the Monsanto stuff, glyphosate. These are issues that Democrats have been championing. So I don't think they can go after him for the things that they would really agree with him on. It's really just his statements about vaccines. But I've also heard him on podcasts. I think he's going to be ready for it. But I think that's really, I don't know what else they would have other than going after him, like, you know, have you cheated on Cheryl? Other than that, I don't really know what else they have. And as for the Republicans, like, this is why I find them so interesting. I don't know. I don't know.
I'll tell you. I'll do the Republicans. Here's what the Republicans are going to hit him on. He's pro-choice, and he's going to be running the Health and Human Services Department, which does have a federal control on abortion policy or how abortion policy is enforced in America. So there are pro-life people that will have a real problem with the fact that Donald Trump has put forward somebody that is avowed pro-choice. It's not ambiguous with that. And so, you know, Mike Pence has organized a active campaign against RFK Jr. from the pro-life side. It's being funded by Leonard Leo, one of the biggest conservative donors. And I think what you are seeing here, and this is something that kind of runs counter narrative to the fact that liberals obviously are very upset, if not horrified, by the Trump administration, is that this is the boxing in of the pro-life movement on the right, the likes of which we've not seen in our lifetime since me and you have been alive. I mean, like our lifetime charts to the rise of pro-life politics being at their apex. And I would say probably their apex are like, they're able to knock down the stem cell argument like in the early 2000s. And it has waned a little bit since then. And it collapsed after the Dobbs decision. Because
well,
now,
like to steal one of your phrases, they're the dog that caught the car.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not popular to have women dying because of these policies. So, yeah, but that's why this is so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be party line. And so I don't know where it falls, which is why, like, I'm popping all the popcorn and I'm excited to watch it. Like, this is better than any, like, Super Bowl for me, especially with this Super Bowl lineup. This is going to be really fun to watch. Yeah. Just from like a sicko, you know, political theater type of.
One of the Democrats should bring Olivia Nuzzi into the gallery. Just have her sit right behind RFK. Just right behind him.
That would be so good.
Do you see Caroline Kennedy came out against RFK Jr.?
Really? Mm-hmm. God, she's been irrelevant for a while.
Unfit for office. Which, look, there's a larger conversation with both of these candidates that the Democrats had both. Like, if there's any element of electoral utility that Maha moms now exist, if Maha moms are part of the hedge against white women fleeing the Republican Party post-Dobbs, now it's like, yeah, but I'm also concerned with red dye number 40. And so now I possibly want to vote Republican because RFK Jr.'s there. Or the Tulsi Gabbard side, which is more the podcast idea of like, hey, there should be a different way of thinking and this new version of anti-war, isolationist, whatever you want to slot that in. That's where Tulsi's lane is. Democrats had both of them.
They did.
They existed both there. And the Democrats didn't just lose them. They chased them across the street with like sticks and torches. They said, no, you're not allowed in here anymore. Go away, go away, go away. You have been bad. You have displeased us. So I do think that both of these are fascinating because I don't know if everybody in the Republican side wanted them. Like why do we need RFK Jr.? Why do we need Tulsi Gabbard? But also the Democrats, it's going to be telling on RFK who's loyal. But let's move over to Tulsi for right now because Tulsi has out and out said, that she is more despised by the Democratic Party than RFK Jr. is. RFK Jr. was somebody that they had to run an Oppo campaign against. Tulsi is out and out loathed by a lot of Democrats, and she has been not shy in returning the favor. I don't know if she's going to get Democratic votes in this. She might have to go party line Republican, and that's the danger here.
Well, and what's interesting is that one of the things that would make someone like me, who's listened to her on so many different podcasts, and I liked her back when she was in Congress. I did think she was an independent thinker. When I see Tom Cotton, who's the biggest warmonger who's possibly ever lived, tweeting what a good pick she would be for director of national intelligence, it makes me wonder what the hell she's promising these people in the back rooms. So it's like, even this Republican support that she's getting, is she's going to lose?
She's put together the weirdest coalition, dude.
This
is like
weird.
The weirdest coalition. It's like Tom Cotton, Posobiec from One America News Network, and Meghan McCain standing like arm in arm saying, do not touch a gray hair on Tulsi's head. She is a true patriot. And like, I don't know what else the three of those people have in common about anything. Maybe food is good and air is necessary to breathe, but they are all in for Tulsi. The people that are all in for Tulsi are like 10 toes down, and it's so odd the coalition that's been put together.
And the Tom Cotton one doesn't make sense to me, because you would think with him wanting to regime change everyone that he wouldn't like this woman who has been speaking out against regime changes for her entire career. So yeah, I don't really, like I said, it's all so confusing to me. So it's one of those where it's hard to do a preview because we don't know what that hearing is going to look like. We don't know what those votes are going to look like. It's a true question mark in a land of very few question marks.
Here's what I would say. The Tulsi hearing is going to be more interesting to me than the RFK one. The RFK one's very, very interesting. The Tulsi one is more interesting just because RFK is a known quantity, right? Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the day, he's Bobby's son. He has been woven into the fabric of American politics from the day that he was born, essentially. Yeah. He has a long history of having these stances on food supply and exercise and what we put in our bodies. It has been his life's work. Yes, we can have this longer conversation about where he is on vaccines and whether or not it's harmful and whether or not he is some Dr. Mengele in Samoa, which I'm sure will be brought up. But like, he's a known quantity. If you don't listen to Joe Rogan, Tulsi Gabbard was a footnote in the 2016 election that now just operates in this other lane. The things that people mostly know of her are just things that were kind of said to defame her. Every time that she's appeared on camera, people tend to like her. She was well liked during the 2020 election when she ran as a Democrat for president of the United States. Like, so the hearing is going to matter a lot. If she is able to stare down these senators and she comes off like somebody that feels like a director of national intelligence, I think public opinion is going to move in her favor. And you're going to see some people that are on the fence say, whatever. Like, am I really going to spike this? Like,
well, and she knows what it's like to be in Congress. So I don't think it's going to be that intimidating for her. And she is poised. So I think you're right that I think this hearing is going to work in her favor, no matter what strategy the Democrats and Republicans have. Like, I think she can handle it.
And the other thing is that I don't know if the issues that really are dividing Republicans make for great television spectacle. Like if somebody asks her about FISA warrants, because that's one of the biggest things that apparently is in the sticking point for Republicans is her stance on, is it Article 702, whatever
Section 702.
Section 702. That's it. Essentially, it's that when we are applying FISA warrants to people that are outside of the country, can sometimes a little bit of domestic things get mixed in there, and how do you handle it? And 702 says we can do it. It is looked at by opponents, including multiple times in pretty red letters by Tulsi Gabbard, that it is a backdoor for the CIA to spy on Americans, which is something that they are not supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Even though it's the FBI that has been proven to be peeking in it more than intelligence. So there's that too. If you know the details of it, you know that she wouldn't even be in charge of the agency that's been abusing it the most.
There we go.
So
she apparently has had more supportive things about 702 to say to some of the Republicans, but some of the Republicans don't believe her. All my point is that you saw by how eloquently that fell out of my mouth that it's not something that sums up into a soundbite. Like, there's going to be a lot of people that will be able to hit RFK Jr. and say, why do you want kids to die? Vaccines save kids' lives. Why do you want them dead? Bumper sticker. Why do you want kids to die? Question mark. Simple idea. It is a very pointed question that RFK is going to have to answer. You can't get to like, do you want terrorists in America? And she'll say no. Like, it's just harder to get to what I think that the main problems are with her.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be fun to watch. Did you watch any of the other confirmation hearings for the people that have
Hold on,
gone?
one last Tulsi. I just want to put this out because I'll say it every time that we talk about this. If Bernie Sanders doesn't vote for her, he's a bad person.
I know. Like, she tanked her.
She quit her job. She quit her job and tanked her entire political career in the Democratic Party for Bernie. Bernie specifically. I don't care whether or not Bernie agrees with her. I don't care if Bernie likes her. He owes it to her. She quit her job for him. He has a vote for her right now. If he does not do it, he's a bad person.
I would hope that he's pragmatic enough too to know that, especially in this administration, if you tank her nomination, you're not getting someone who is more anti-war.
Probably not.
You're not. So she's the best chance if you want someone who would police the spying and not be sending the CIA to like murder tons of people. Like, she's your best shot. So that's what I would hope the Democrats would be aware of too. This isn't a situation where you're going to get someone you like better. So, really consider this before you shoot it down.
By the way, if we're just going to look before we move on to the other stuff, RFK Jr. currently on Polymarket at a 75% chance. So you would be making money if you bet against him. But right now, Tulsi Gabbard, who was once in the 70s, now she's a pick'em. She's 50% either way. You can make money either way betting on her. And I don't know. I like the upside. I like the upside. I like yes. I like yes at 50%. If it goes below 50%, I definitely like yes.
I like both of them getting confirmed. If I was someone who bet on these things, which I'm not.
We gotta get into this.
I know.
We gotta. Come on. Let's log on to a VPN, Jen. Let's change this. Change some euros, and let's get into the crypto freak market, and we'll just be poly market nerds. We'll just be option trading. This is gonna be great.
Yeah, but then it'll be so embarrassing for our careers when we're wrong about everything.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'm never wrong. This is free money.
You still owe me steak, sir. I'm not forgetting
that's
that
the one
steak.
thing. It's fine. It's fine. By the way, uncontroversial here is Kash Patel, somebody that I thought was also square into the jaws of death here, but he's at 91% on poly market. I haven't heard anything about. I've heard like
He's
as
not
soon
a
as
celebrity.
well, yeah, but he's like said people who are going to vote for him should go to jail.
Well, so this is why I think his hearing is also an interesting one to watch, because where I think Tulsi will get people to like her more because she's poised and in control of herself, I think Kash might be someone who screws himself by getting too feisty with the Democrats. So I think he has the potential of being at 91 now, and then word vomit comes out, and so that'll be another spicy one.
It's going to be, he's going to have to be, I mean, like he's worked in intelligence before. It's not like he's not been around the halls of powers, but he's going to have to be shiny shoe Kash Patel and not podcast. I'm selling my own merch Kash Patel, like who is,
and is he
the
capable
guy
of
who
that?
says the thing. Yeah.
I
think so. Like he was the stick by the book man before he became the podcast man. So
yeah, but
would suspect.
like in these hearings, when you're in there for 4, 5, 6 hours and you start to really despise these senators and they're on their third rounds of questions, it gets spicy, especially in that last round.
Yeah.
So if I had any advice for viewers, if you're going to watch any of these things, make it the last hour. That's where all the good stuff happens.
When stuff gets a little sweaty. When stuff gets a little sweaty.
That's the sound clip gold. And that'll be the best part for Kash Patel for sure.
See, that was, the Hegseth thing. It's like, just like, there are people that don't agree with how the military should be run within the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. You had to peel off, really, I mean, if you look at the final vote, you had to peel off one vote. One person. Like, they couldn't even get close to it. All right, so you did watch some of the other lesser heralded hearings. What'd you find?
So I did watch the John Ratcliffe hearing. He's the director of the CIA director, which is interesting because he's kind of getting demoted. Like he was the director of national intelligence in the last Trump administration, and now he's in charge of a lower division of the intelligence. I didn't learn anything about him, and I just thought that the most interesting thing about that hearing is it was very Rubio-like, where it was just very cordial. Everyone from Congress seemed to be excited to see their old friend again. You would think that with the history of the CIA, there might be some tough questions. Like, there weren't. Like, it was surprisingly boring, and so I'm not surprised that his nomination flew through. I also watched...
Let me just say this. If you don't think that he's not getting confirmed, if you don't think that it's almost assured that he is going to get spiked, then pissing off the incoming CIA director is not something that I would like to do personally.
And this is true. Speaking of people you probably don't want to piss off, I also watched Pam Bondi, who's now... Did she get confirmed already as Attorney General? I don't think so.
Yes. I believe she was. Yes, she was confirmed.
Okay. Yeah.
Because she already made some. Oh wait, no. She's the acting.
I don't think she's confirmed yet.
Yeah, I don't think that she's confirmed yet.
But based on the questioning, I think she will be confirmed, and I think she will get some Democratic votes, mainly because there was a person that she had. Like, first of all, she's the Attorney General of Florida, so she does have experience. And when they were questioning her about her time as the Florida Attorney General, she did sound like someone who knew what she was doing, which made me feel better. She also had a Democratic opponent of hers that she had run against in some political campaign that she ended up hiring. And this person came and testified on her behalf, talking about how, obviously if she's willing to work with her opponent, and it wasn't, the most friendly of campaigns, but like she saw that I was qualified and wanted me to work for her. And so he talked about how she wasn't some party stooge. Some of the quotes there, when you think about loyalty to party over loyalty to country, some of her answers, I mean, she definitely made sure that all of her answers would not piss off Donald Trump. And so when it came to questions about 2020 election stuff, I was unsatisfied with the stuff that she said.
Because she worked, for those of you who do not know, she worked as a personal attorney or advisor for Trump.
She wasn't a personal attorney, so she was very clear about that. That is something that does seem to be wrong in the media. She wasn't a personal attorney at the time. She was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but she wasn't working for, she was in the Office of Legal Counsel maybe? But yeah, she was working for the government, not specifically for Trump. And she was sent to Pennsylvania, and she kept trying to say that there was something fishy about Pennsylvania, and the Democrats wouldn't let her finish her sentences. Yeah. So I didn't get any specifics about what she's talking about. But when it comes to the 2020 election stuff, she was definitely more on board with the, it was stolen from him line than I'm comfortable with. But if you really think about it big picture, this isn't something that's going to happen again because Donald Trump can't run again. So it's just, if there's things to worry about, as much as anyone who's listened to us on We're Not Wrong knows, like, I hated everything that Trump did after he lost the 2020 election. And I do think it was disqualifying. But that said, because he can't run again, this isn't an ongoing threat. So I think the bigger ongoing threat with her, if she's confirmed as our attorney general, is her lobbying conflicts, because she used to be a lobbyist for GEO Group, which is private prison company. And when it comes to immigrant detention, in the first Trump administration, 80% of immigrants were put in private prisons. That increased during Biden to 90%. So that's where we're sitting now. And they want to open a lot more of these private prisons because they want to detain a lot more immigrants. And this new law that we have, the Lake and Riley Act, really does set the stage for detaining a lot of people, regardless of whether they commit crimes or not. And so the fact that
if they have crossed illegally.
Well, that's unclear too, because if you're talking about undocumented people and you've gotten rid of the CPB1 app, does that include people who are here legally because they're seeking asylum and they're just getting deported? So it's like when you say illegal immigration, like, it's unclear what that even means. Because if you're just rounding up undocumented people, some of them might have crossed here, using the asylum process that was being used during the Biden administration. And so are those the people getting deported? Like, we don't actually know. What we do know is that the Lake and Riley Act allows people who are accused of crimes, not committed of anything, have no trials, whatever. If they're accused, they can be detained. I didn't see any limits on, the times for those detentions, and then possibly deported. But it's the detaining part that I want us to focus on here, because the attorney general was a lobbyist for the private prisons that are going to profit from all of these immigrants. So the stage has been set for that to happen. And I think that if there's anything that, if I wanted to stop her nomination from going forward, that I would be honing in on, it would be that. Because that's going to be, out of all the executive orders and the stuff that Trump is doing, that's the one that's really getting acted on right away. Is rounding up, immigrant roundups and deportations and Dr. Phil ride-alongs. Yeah. Yeah. If people don't know what he's talking about, Dr. Phil went along with
Tom Homan.
Yeah, with Tom Homan, and they got an immigrant, and Dr. Phil is just like, "How do you know who I am?" And this immigrant's just like, "You're Dr. Phil." It was the weirdest clip. It was like, what are you doing here?
It is truly a piece, maybe our first real piece of 2025 performance art that, like, just to show, like, where were we in time? And you have a Trump administration that knows, and I said this on the bonus episode that came out on Monday, there will be a scandal involved with this round of deportations that is happening. It's going very fast, very publicly. It is the number one story that the Trump administration wants you to know about. And the reason why they want you to know about that it is because what they are doing are targeting the worst of the worst of the worst right now.
They say they're doing.
But that's why they are doing it with Dr. Phil. Because the clip that went viral was Dr. Phil talking to somebody that they were saying was a child sex offender. And so it's like they want to bank all that with the American people, because when the ugly thing happened, and I do think it is a matter of when, not a matter of if, when somebody that wasn't supposed to go goes, when somebody, God forbid, gets hurt, God forbid, gets killed, a child starts crying uncontrollably, and then everybody knows their name the next day. When that happens, I think the Trump administration knows that what they want to do is have the public say, well, that was bad, but these things that I have seen were good. And so we feel bad for this situation, but the process is a net positive, because right now it is. Right now, deportations of just flatline deportations are barely positive, but they're positive, and that's more than I've ever seen it in my life. You know, one of the many things that are kind of unprecedented about our current moment. But that's the reason why Tom Homan is on television constantly. That's the reason why
it's propaganda.
He's bringing Dr. Phil out to be like, so what are you doing here? What's going on?
Yeah.
You fiddling with kitties? Is that what you're doing? Like,
it's a
like
marketing
that's why they
campaign.
have him. Well, yeah. I mean, I think they know that they are only one person who gets shot accidentally away from there being a way different round of public pressure on this. And so they are doing their best to build their house brick by brick to see whether or not they can withstand it, because it will happen. It will. Like, mark my words, it will happen.
Non-criminals are being rounded up. There was a guy in Bakersfield who was a citizen, but he was Mexican, and ICE chased him down, slashed his tires, detained him for like 4 hours. Like, this is a U.S. citizen, and until they could prove that, they treated him as if he wasn't. He was detained despite doing nothing wrong. So it's like, it's already happening, but we haven't had like the really bad thing where everyone knows their name.
The scandal. There will be a scandal.
It's inevitable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, as long as deportations are popular, and right now they are, they will try to put out as much to show that this is a promises made, promises kept thing for their base, and B, to, again, just showcase that, like, oh, look at this awful person. Old Joe was asleep and he was marauding your neighborhood, and then Sheriff Trump came in and put him on a catapult back to Guatemala.
Yeah. And this is one area where Congress is lending a hand with the Lake and Riley Act, because this is going to allow them to detain and deport people that have been convicted of no crimes. And so if they're saying that this is all about convicting criminals, well, the law that they just passed says a completely different thing. So,
with Democratic support, by the way.
Yes.
Was not party line.
It was not party line.
Both senators from Georgia.
Yeah. Yep.
John Ossoff, who is up in the midterms, possibly running against Brian Kemp, the popular Republican governor. That will be probably the heavyweight fight of the midterms. But you can see, if you wonder why John Ossoff is supporting the Lake and Riley bill, because Lake and Riley, of course, murdered in Georgia. That's
it's tough on crime. Yeah.
Have you heard him talk?
Ossoff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obama impression. Him and Josh Shapiro are the last of the Obama impersonators. They used to. It was like a round of white guys that came out of Democratic politics that were all like, "What do you mean? I'll talk like Obama? Oh no, I'm not doing an impression."
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then I watched.
Who else?
So I watched one more, and this was kind of selfish because my husband's in clean energy, and so I did want to watch the Secretary of Energy's confirmation. And this one was really fascinating to me. I was expecting to throw things and break my TV. I actually didn't.
Who is it?
So his name's Chris Wright, and I mean, he's a businessman. He's had investments in all kinds of different energy. He's branded as someone who is a fossil fuel investor, which he is. But he was explaining he's also invested in, clean energy as well. And so he did seem well-rounded on the information side of all of it. I was pleased that he said he was going to divest from all of his energy holdings, which it sounds like those are significant. And that's a promise if he follows through on it. Like, a lot of people aren't making those promises in the Trump administration. So that was cool. And I knew he was going to promise to pump more fossil fuels, burn them. Like, that wasn't surprising to me. My fear was that his goal was going to be to shut down green energy. Yeah. And I was very pleased to hear him say, not only is he not going to do that, but he thinks that climate change is real. And he still thinks that our country should be on the path of, greening stuff up. But he was just saying that like now is not the time to, go completely off of fossil fuels. So it's like we're definitely going to pump more. But I don't think with this guy in charge, the green energy industry is in some kind of existential crisis, which was nice to hear. So there you go.
Well, that's interesting.
It was surprising.
I would not have expected that from Jen Briney's review of the director of energy.
I wasn't expecting it either. And to say that, knowing that he needed all the Republican votes, that's, I guess, what surprised me more, because he could have just pandered to the party of fossil fuels, and he didn't do that. And so,
yeah, I mean, and then that's, I don't know. I think a lot of this is, it's more complicated than people want to admit oftentimes, where like, Texas, I'm pretty sure this is right, that Texas has a greener grid than California.
It's pretty close because of our wind energy here in Texas.
Yeah.
We have a ton of wind energy.
And so it's like, but nobody certainly either of those two states are ever going to bring that up. Like California's not going to say like, we, rely more on coal and natural gas than Texas. And Texas is never going to say that they're greener than California. Yeah. But like, there is a reality for this technology as it continues to get better and more efficient, that you do want it as part of your grid. You know, it is just, it is a natural evolution to it. So it does make sense. As long as it's cheaper, I don't think any director of energy should turn their eye away from it. The question becomes, if it's more expensive, but it is for the cause of environmentalism, the cause of reversing climate change, that's where you tend to get into this, economics versus environment kind of question.
Yeah.
But as long as it's cheaper, which oftentimes it can be.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point now that, solar and wind don't really need massive subsidies to be successful because the cost has come down so much. But one of the other factors that he did talk about was nuclear energy being a piece of combating climate change. And so I also listened to a hearing about fusion energy, and it's been fascinating because I've listened to most of these that have gone on in the last 5 years, and the conversation has gone from will this ever be viable to when, to how do we make this commercially viable as fast as possible. So it's like that technology is moving so fast, and it's so far off the radar of most Americans, because like the best thing about it is that with the nuclear energy that we have now that's made places uninhabitable, it's because the waste lasts for thousands of years and we don't know what the hell to do with it. When it comes to fusion energy, the half-life is 12 years. So it's like, and there's not nearly as much waste to begin with. So once they get this technology up and running, it's a game changer for energy, and it's really exciting. And this guy was talking about that too. So I just feel like, while I'm not a fan of fossil fuels, and I would like us. Yeah, I know.
Oh, no, I thought that was your thing. I thought you were just gas guzzler Briney. That's what we call you behind your back.
That sounds really dirty, actually. But yeah, just hearing the way he was talking, it's not going to be a war on green energy. It really is going to be a mix. He didn't sound like some kind of, ideologue that I was expecting from a Republican pick, with the way the rhetoric was, especially at the Republican National Convention. I was expecting someone who was going to take us backwards, and I don't think Chris Wright is that. So in the same way where I feel like Democrats should look at Tulsi very carefully for DNI and be like, you're not going to get anyone better than this out of the Trump administration, I'm kind of seeing the same thing with Chris Wright. And if I was a Democrat, I'd be voting for him.
Wow. Look at that.
There you go.
Look at that. All right. Well, next week we will have our recap of, I think, the last of the big confirmation hearings, because we're going to get, I don't know when Cash is, but I know RFK Jr. is today, as you guys are listening to this, Wednesday.
He's
Tulsi
a
Gabbard is
two-dayer.
Thursday.
So RFK gets 2 days. He's Wednesday
RFK
and
gets 2
Thursday.
days. Yeah.
And I think
but
Cash
that
is Friday.
And then Cash is Friday. So this is must-watch C-SPAN, my friends. Must-watch C-SPAN. That you gotta get every second of this. Maybe not the opening statements, but all the questioning.
Yeah.
All the questioning. And then I guess we got to watch another one on Congressional Dish, right? We got to one of these. We got to pick one of them and sit down and watch it.
Yeah. Let's decide that tomorrow.
Okay, we'll do that. But until then, Jen Briney, Congressional Dish, and We're Not Wrong. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Doug and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you want to write me like our friend Walter did, you can do so, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. If you want to find video clips of the show, TikTok, Justin R. Young, Instagram, Justin R. Young, and X is Justin R. Young. I'm doing a thing. I want to know from you guys. There's a new thing I'm doing. On any of those platforms, Instagram, TikTok, X, hit me up and I want this. Send me a thing that you're seeing talked about elsewhere and then just ask me the question that I get all the time. Should I worry about this? I want to do short form videos. Quicker short form videos about stuff like that. Justin R. Young on all those platforms. TikTok, Instagram, and X. YouTube. This channel is Politics. That's where you get the long form videos. You also get the short form videos on Shorts. Of course, you can support us on PayPal. PayPal.me/PayJury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Again, that is Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Of course, you can only get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 bonus episodes of PX3 for under $100. Of course, our founding tier gets your name read at the end of the podcast, like these fine folks in the Titanic founding tier, including L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, that's Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will Porter, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Trickers, Gloria, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley Stephen, Ryan. If you want your name read on the show, only one place to go, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That'll wrap it up for us right now. On Friday's edition of the show, we have a new guest making their PX3 debut, a reporter who's always getting into it. I appreciate his ability to really just dive in and find the monkey. Michael Tracy on the show this Friday. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics. This is the only show that dares discuss. 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.